It's not going to be land that's going to be the burning issue.
You're saying the thousands of rands that people have paid into private healthcare insurance, they're perhaps going to take that soon.
Don't be surprised if that's where the fight's going to start. You're going to get one politician get up and saying, guys, we're moving on the medical aids, and you're going to see all hell break loose.
You're watching WORLDVIEW, the #1 media company where we explore everyone's perspectives on all things that can broaden our worldview. Davy Rood says the ANC has hit a brick wall. The Democratic Alliance have been amateurs, and there are only 3 ways out of this mess. We can borrow more, but at what costs? We cannot increase taxes, we can only cut back on spending. And we desperately need economic growth measures to revitalize South Africa. We are heading towards a fiscal cliff. Today we have with us Magnus Heystek from Brenters Wealth, the investment strategist guru of South Africa. Magnus, so I think a lot of South Africans are sort of caught unaware. I thought I was the only person that struggled with a budget, but now we're here for the first time in South Africa. We have a budget postponement. Can you perhaps give us some backstory? How did it lead to this point?
Well, that's a very interesting question, as they always say. And one has to go back over the last 20 years, in fact, to understand how we got here. From 2002 to 2008, we had phenomenal budgets, and there was a big commodity boom. China was booming. It was buying our metals and minerals. Our currency strengthened from 13 down to 5.5. There was a primary budget surplus for many of those years, and our borrowing costs, or borrowing, was very low at about 25% of GDP. Now, that party ended in 2008 with a great financial crash. We were still protected to a certain extent for another year or two with the World Cup in 2010. Money was still coming into the country, tourists, etc. And in about 2010 and 2011, things started to change slightly. The commodity boom ended, and we started going backwards in terms of most economic metrics, in terms of employment, in terms of growth rate, manufacturing. And fast forward to 2015, the ratings agencies started downgrading us from investment grade down quickly, chop, and we ended up being in junk status. At the same time, the government on spending. In fact, it's well-known they spend money on wages and salaries.
Yeah.
And they started borrowing money. So at the same time, 2 things happened. Our borrowing escalated, but our economic growth started declining. And remember, you can only generate revenue from a growing economy. For a period of time, you can kick the can down the road, as the Americans like to say, by borrowing more money, both domestically and abroad. And we did that. We did that hand over fist. And our debt level started increasing 30, 35, 40, 45%. And every single budget, whoever was finance minister at the time would promise fiscal responsibility, fiscal containment, and gave projection that they're going to bring the budget deficit down under control. And they failed every single time for 10, if not 12 years running. Now we're in a situation where our GDP ratio to our debt is about 76%. Remember, I said 25, 15 years ago. We're now at 76, and our total debt is about 5.5 trillion rand, and we're spending 440 billion a year just on the debt to pay back those loans. So it's now the biggest single item, and very soon the biggest item on our budget. We've got to pay back our debt. It's like you taking on more and more debt with your bank, and eventually all your money is used to pay back the bank. And so how are you going to live? Now, again, the government could get out of this debt trap if the economy was growing at 2% or 2.5%, because it generates more tax revenues. Economy growing at 1%. Problem. Our debt deficit is now projected to go up to, in my opinion, very close to 80%, or 7.5 trillion rand in 3 years. And as Fikile Mbalula said yesterday or 2 days ago on an interview, he said, we have exhausted our opportunities to borrow money. Well, that means we broke. We are effectively broke. Yeah. Now, and Davy is 100% correct, and other economists have been talking about that, whereas other mainstream economists from the big banks and the asset managers are very, very quiet about this, but we are moving slowly towards a debt crisis, where at some stage the IMF is going to say, guys, no more loans from the IMF, no more loans from the World Bank until you get your house in order. Government is not prepared to cut where they need to cut. You know, the chainsaw that President MüLLER is using in Argentina, and Elon Musk and President Trump now in the United States. And that's what they must do. The corruption and the mismanagement and the bad governance has to be stopped, or we're going to hit a debt wall. Whether it's this year or next year or 3 years down the line, it's inevitable. Inevitable. And this is where we come in as investment strategists. And I often quote the saying by the American ice hockey player Wayne Gretzky. He says the best hockey players, they score because they don't skate where the puck is, but where the puck is going to be. And you got to think forward. We are heading for a crash, and I am talking about it. And after this budget shambles, even more so, because it showed to me that the government was panicking. 2% increase in VAT to plug a hole does not solve the problem.
Yeah. Wow, a lot to dissect. First of all, I've also read your article on BizNews. Basically, what you're suggesting is that a lot of the so-called economic boom that we had is pretty much just a fluke under Mbeki. It seems like you're suggesting that. It wasn't really something that we really did really well. It was just the commodity prices boom in China, for example.
Quite correct. Luck counts, like in sport, like in golf, luck counts. And we were lucky that there was this massive boom from China, and we were a primary producer of the stuff that they like and manufacture, and they were exporting. That part here stopped. I mean, China is in a deflationary spiral. They've got too much stuff. They need to sell it at lower prices. And because they're selling at lower prices, they're not going to pay higher prices for the raw goods. So our luck has run out, quite correctly. And there has been very little from a South African perspective that we've done to repair the economy, repair the infrastructure, repair the logistic issue, and the bad governance in all layers of society. So we cannot expect handouts. And now we have a new boogeyman on the horizon, and his name is President Donald Trump. He has changed the rules of the game, and he has focused on South Africa and said, guys, your party is over. I don't like what you're doing. And this has caused huge reaction in South Africa, whether you like it or not. And the debate is quite intense at the moment. But he calls the shots. He is determining what is going to happen. He is the biggest economy in the world. We're a pipsqueak. And all our moaning and groaning and headlines about Trump go home means nothing. We have to listen to him and try and do a deal. But it doesn't appear like the ANC is going to make a deal. They're going to be stubborn, and they're going to show the middle finger. And if Trump pushes through with a boycott, that'll be very, very bad for the South African economy.
Yeah, and I think just this, I don't know if you've been following the news, but this entire Zelensky affair seems to me like South Africa is just throwing once again the middle finger towards the United States. Ironically, the South African government wasn't the first people to support the Ukraine and the Ukraine-Russia war, but now inviting them on a state visit, Zelensky, seems to me like US, it seems like a middle finger.
Indeed it does, and indeed it does. And again, our reaction hasn't been fantastic, and we cannot, we depend on America for a lot of our trade. They are very big investors in South Africa. And secondly, our foreign trade, our foreign policy of the ANC and the government has been very clearly, in the eyes of the Americans, anti-America. It was anti-Israel. And basically what America is saying, if you are if you are enemies with our friends, you are enemies with us. And take it or leave it, that is the position. And we don't know how to play this, because under Biden, they could get away with it. And with other European countries, you can get away with it by playing both sides of the game. But Trump has said there's only one side of the coin, and it's my coin. My face is on that coin. And there's going to be some really real adjustments have to take place, unless we're going to be hit by, be kicked out of AGOA. And there's lots of Congress men in America who are writing letters to Trump saying, kick the South Africans out. They don't deserve to have free trade with America. Look what they are doing as a country in defiance of American policy against United States interests. They don't deserve to be in the same party. And then they've got a point. They have a point.
Mm. You suggest that we don't have anyone to really bail us out anymore, but isn't BRICS the solution? Isn't South Africa turning towards countries like China?
How much money has China invested in South Africa? Ask yourself that question. Very, very little. And it's almost on their terms. They come and they extract almost like the colonialists of old. They come to us and they set up maybe a mine or two, send in their workers to mine the factory, and all the profits go to China. So China has not been a big benefactor of South Africa. Yes, there's a lot of trade between the two countries, but I don't know very big Chinese investments like the Americans with their motor companies, like the McDonald's, like so many other companies. They're not here. They're not here. The Chinese are not here.
Their cars are here. I see.
Well, yeah, of course. But who benefits? Who benefits? They import the cars, they assemble them here, and but that's not local production. I mean, that's assembly lines, so it's totally different. But and so we can't expect China to take the place of America in terms of aid, assistance, and trade agreements. That's not going to happen.
Magnus, I've spoken a few times to Anthea Jeffrey, Dr. Anthea Jeffrey, and she likes to talk about the National Democratic Revolution. Is this all in play here? Do you see this all being a part of a big plan, the National Democratic Revolution, to change South Africa in a fundamentally different direction?
I believe in what she says. I've been following Anthea for many, many, many years, watched the podcasts, and other people who claim that. And there is a distinct pattern in the policies of the ANC. They do it very quietly, very surreptitiously. But the end game is to take control of the South African economy, its assets, and they've been doing it. They've been playing a long game, and it's working. They quietly, and sometimes not so quietly, I mean, they've entrenched themselves in all levers of society, all levers of influence, city, province, state. They've effectively stolen the water rights, the mineral rights, and now they look at land. And if you don't think that there's not a plan behind the scenes, then you're crazy. Then you're fast asleep. And you can see it in our taxation system, which 20 years ago, quietly, our taxation system was changed from a residence-based taxation system to a worldwide basis. In other words, your income will be taxed worldwide. Doesn't matter where you are as a resident or where you earn the income. Now, that was a quiet little change, but then already I could see, and I said to myself, I'm surprised not more people are alarmed about this, because that was one of the doors that they locked, and they sort of encaptured South African taxpayers. You add that with exchange controls and increased taxation, and you'll see how the government is encroaching on the wealth and taking more percentage of wealth. So I'm a believer that there is a pattern, and it needs to be, people need to be aware of that. We must try and stop that. And I think what Trump has done inadvertently by exposing all the BE legislations that are out there, he might be a catalyst for people to wake up and to say, guys, look what is happening. Now, if you read the Expropriation Bull, and once again, it depends who you read or who you believe, you get one camp saying, it's nothing, not an issue, blah, 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 don't worry. And when politicians say that, don't worry, then I worry.
Yeah.
And then you have, of course, certain liberal newspaper columnists and stuff, it's fine. We've been protected by the Constitution and the courts. And then you have the other side of the argument, and I'm not going to say right wing or left wing, just other people who say, guys, this is far more serious than you think. Free Market Foundation, IRR, Sakaliga, and many others are saying this potentially, if it falls into the wrong hands, can lead to a terrible consequence down the line. Now, that's where we are at the moment. This debate is raging. Nobody is right at this point in time. Nobody is wrong. But where is it leading to? And you just have the start of expropriation of a property, whether it's land, whether it's money, company, anything can be expropriated. And I think personally, I think it's not going to be land that's going to be the burning issue. There's a lot of land and so on. I think they're going for the reserves in the national, in the medical aid funds. I think there's 90 or 800 billion sitting there. That to me will be the first thing that they'll start devising an argument and saying, guys, we're pushing ahead with national health insurance. There's no money for it. We need to take it where we can find it, and that's going to be the reserves of the medical aids. That's a wild guess, but some of these guesses sometimes come true. So that's where I would think there's going to be a big debate. We're pushing through with national health insurance. We're going to take the money from the medical aids, and then you're going to see a big fight, and that's where it's going to start. It might be a piece of land that some crooked mayor in some towns wants to confiscate for national interest and have an argument that we're taking that piece of land. But it's more inclined to be something big like the reserves of the medical aids. But we'll see how that plays out.
Just to put this over perhaps in a layman's perspective, you're saying the thousands of rands that people have paid into private healthcare insurance, they're perhaps going to take that soon. It's the potential that they're going to take that.
Well, not soon. I think they're going to start the debate and say, guys, we are going ahead with national health insurance. As Ramaphosa said, whether you like it or not, it's law now. And then from there, it's almost like a logical consequence. Where they're going to get the money to roll out national health insurance? There's no money in the budget. There really is no more money in the budget. They can't find it there. Where will they find it? There's a heck of a lot of money lying in the reserves of all the medical aids that have been built up over many, many years to protect members and future members from sharp increases in medical costs. Let me just say, don't be surprised if that's where the fight's going to start. You're going to get one politician get up and saying, guys, we're moving on the medical aids, and you're going to see all hell break loose.
And how do you see the DA have been co-opted into this? Because we once talked about saving South Africa, and now it's just, we're basically talking about how do we not all die tomorrow? Do you think the DA has been co-opted into this grand strategy of the National Democratic Revolution?
I'm finding great difficulty understanding what the game plan of the DA is. And I actually tweeted something to that effect. I'm saying, exactly what does the DA stand for? I'm now very confused, because the way I read it, and, I'm not the smartest guy in town, but I can read, and it said before the elections, we anti this, and boom, who's in charge of those three aspects that they're against? The DA. I thought Ramaphosa has played them beautifully. So land expropriation, boom, Steenhuisen, McPherson, another division, and agriculture is the third DA minister. So you've got suddenly the DA guys have to go and sell this policy, this bad policy on behalf of the ANC under the guise of the GNU. That's how I see it, and I have not yet seen a cogent and a rational explanation from either Steenhuisen or Helen Zille. What is their game? And if you judge on response on X, so many other people say, guys, we have no idea what the DA stands for at the moment. And that's very, very dangerous for a political party. Before the election, they were very forceful, very clear. We're anti-A, B, and C. Now, my golly, sounds like the ANC is is playing them as a puppet. So I'm confused. I'm very confused.
And what do you think of their spat now with Sakeliga? It seems like Sakeliga suggesting they're implementing BE, and Steenhuisen says it's not his department, and there's now a lot of drama going on there. I don't know if you've...
That's typical. That's typical politicians. You can ask a politician anything, and they'll give you any answer, and you'll have 17 pages. I read that reply from Steenhuisen. It was about 9 pages long. I had 3 cups of coffee in between trying to analyze the letter. I didn't understand what he was trying to say, and I think he instructed 3 of his junior associates and said, listen, draw us up some document with a lot of rubbish in and I'll sign it. Because it made no sense. It made no sense. And he still didn't answer Sakeliga's criticism, and then he played below the belt, hit below the belt. He said, these just guys are just trying to raise money. Typical. If you don't have a defense, a real defense, you play funny games and say they're just trying to raise money, and they're trying to stick on controversy as if that's his reply.
And Magnus, I don't know what to believe anymore, but this, you probably obviously know better, but there's this new act that's going to take land property in South Africa in terms of racial lines, that land needs to be owned in terms of racial, represent the racial proportionality of South Africa. What's going on there?
Well, that again, it's not only that, but that's absolutely crazy. I mean, first of all, I thought they've done away with racial classification. What am I? Am I white? Am I colored? Am I black? Am I Indian? I mean, I thought we buried that argument 30 years ago when the new government came to power, but it would seem not. So secondly, our country is so multiracial, multicultural, and intermarriages, and how the heck are we spending so much time on working on ratios according to, again, that is straightforward out of the Marxist playbooks, where things are devised by quota and ratios and edicts from above and so on. It's just crazy. You're interrupting the free flow of people, ownership of land in a so-called free market society. It'll be disastrous. I mean, there are certain people, land in itself doesn't mean much. So we know people don't want land, they want jobs, they want money, they want land. Land means you need to farm with it. And we've seen so many examples of land that was expropriated with land claim, 25 years of land claims, and most of these claims have been settled. But the researchers have gone back and have a look at what people have done with the land. Yes, and many, they built houses and they live in it. Very, very little farming is being done on these farms that have been taken back, and government has paid huge amounts of money for these lands. In many cases, the white farmer who sold his land to government is renting the farm back from government at a very low rate and farming very successfully and pocketing all the profits. That was not the plan of you think you can replace a very successful farmer, whether he's white or black, and then give it to somebody else who has no experience, no knowledge, and no skill, and expect that person to go and farm on the same scale. It's just not going to happen.
We a lot of problems, a lot of context, but solutions. I know you like to talk about offshore investing. What would be some solutions to all of this for South Africans who listen to this?
That's not the solution. I need to stress when people say, yeah, you've been recommending offshore. I always tell people who interview me and ask me questions, I get paid a fee by my clients. Their instructions are very simple. Advise me where to invest my money as best you can and give me the best return at the lowest risk. Very simple. I have to listen to what my clients want. And based on that analysis already 15 years ago, we came to the conclusion that offshore is offering much better value. And I'm not talking politics. I'm talking pure rands and cents. The technology boom had just started in America. Biotechnology, we had Tesla coming onto the market, Amazon was taking off, all those huge American companies, Apple. We did not, and we still don't have a technology industry in South Africa. If you wanted to participate in one of the greatest technological booms in the world ever, You had to take money offshore and go and buy those instruments there. It was not a political decision. It's been turned into a political decision by many people in the local asset management industry, saying, yes, you're disloyal, and why don't you bugger off? I'm saying, no, I'm going nowhere. I live here. I've got my kids here. I've got my grandkids here. I don't want to leave the country, but I want a good return on my money. And that's the whole story.
So it's just generally good advice, you're saying?
Yes. I've also very strongly recommended, for various reasons, people buy property in the Western Cape. That's done very well. I've done so myself. I even bought some more properties this year. But, when we come to liquid investments, there's a very big playing field out the rest of the world. And I often reply to these people who attack me. I'm saying, what airline do you fly when you fly overseas? And why? No, they say I fly with Lufthansa or Virgin. I say, why? Why don't you fly with SAA? They say, no, SAA is too expensive and they don't have the same routes and they've got bad planes. I say, exactly the same principle applies to investments. I want to fly with the best investment airplanes I can find in the world. And then they normally shut up. They don't have an answer to that.
And some practical examples for that's a good advice, but if a person were to offshore, I don't know if you can go that far, but what would be some practical examples to take your money overseas?
We have many clients who live in South Africa with no intention of leaving the country. We took offshore 10 years ago, so 10 million rand. And by investing in things like Tesla, NVIDIA, Meta, or used to be Facebook, etc., that 10 million rand has turned into 120, 130 million rand. I have created intergenerational wealth for those people. They will never spend that money in their lifetime. They have created a second generation wealth and possibly third generation wealth. That's a primary example. Now, if you wanted to buy, and most people you talk to are on Facebook every day, I say, okay, why don't you buy Facebook shares or Meta shares, which has been a phenomenal investment. So you use the product, you're paying $1 price for that. But all I'm saying is, well, go one step further, invest in that company. And then, the kind of penny drops. And I did it with my children when they were younger. I would sit down with my daughters and say, my darling, I've invested some money in Apple, for instance. And I say, that phone in your hand, you actually own a share of the company that makes it. And they say, oh, that's cool, Dad. And that's been a great investment for the kids. Now they can afford to go to university. They've got a car when they go to university, all because Granddaddy 10 years ago put some money away in a very, very fast-growing investment.
And diversifying is a good strategy in general. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. People keep on struggling with that, but yeah, diversifying is a good strategy.
We've got a lot of clients invested in India, in Japan, in Europe. We got clients all over the world. It doesn't matter. One of the best companies to invest in the last couple of years is a Danish pharmaceutical company called Novo Nordisk. Now, I don't think you know the company, but there's a lot of middle-aged women who use the products. It's called Ozempic and Wegovy. I mean, it's a phenomenal investment because every television star in the world is on Ozempic nowadays. Everybody's buying Ozempic, and of course, buy the company, you're part of that profit. So, that's another practical example. You invest in a Danish company, and you made a mountain of money. And there are many, many other such examples, all sitting here in little South Africa, here in Tiger Valley from our offices. We buy these shares. People don't want to immigrate. They all say, offshore investing is like immigrating. I'm saying it's rubbish, absolute rubbish.
Yeah. And investing in an indice or a basket share as opposed to the individual share?
Very clever. If you don't have the skill to go and pick the stock, ask your advisor. You can do it yourself. Compile me a basket of indices, and then you construct various indices. And the index is then comprised of various companies that make up the index. And that's a smart way and it's a cheap way to invest money. There's no excuses not to make good money on the stock markets. It's cheap, it's easy, it's accessible on your phone. Why do people run after the Louis Liebenbergs of the world looking for fantastic investments, whereas you have right now in front of you legitimate, cheap products that give you 15 to 20% year after year, and then you're running after diamond package, and I just don't understand it.
Yeah. Now, if you just take something basic, for example, like the Dow, just compare the Dow today than it was 100 years ago. I mean, you definitely would have made a lot of money. So, yeah.
There are many people, and I've met them, and I do it. You just buy and you forget if you buy, why do you go looking for rubbish type of investment? I've seen so many, and I just cannot understand why people fall for these schemes.
Okay, Magnus, there's been a very interesting conversation. We talked about the problems, the context, we talked about solutions. Is there anything else you want to leave our viewers with?
Once again, if the ANC gets out of the way of business, let business run business, and get out of the way with your crazy laws, your crazy rules. The private sector, it's the nature of the private sector to seek investment opportunities. They will sniff it out. They will create businesses. I mean, our business people are incredible entrepreneurs. They create enormous industries and fruit exporters and solar panels and, but the biggest issue is government. Government stops. No, you've got labor laws, you've got this, you've got that, you've got this law. And eventually these guys say, oh, guys, I'm going to set up my company in Mauritius. It's easier. I can go global. Get out of the way, ANC, and the private sector will do the rest. It's in their interest. And then government will benefit. But they don't see it that way. They think they must control everything. The Starlink example is an example. They want to control the process. And Elon Musk just said, I don't need you guys. Bugger off.
So, yeah, it's like reality has to sink in for a lot of the politicians in South Africa.
Absolutely, absolutely. I actually, believe it or not, I have some of my staff working in Minnesota in the United States. I've got a lady working for me in Harare in Zimbabwe. We all communicate through Starlink. Cheap, easy. I sit and talk to them like I talk to you. I don't care where they are. They do their work, and it works very well. You imagine if you allow South Africans to use Starlink to communicate as easily and efficiently as I can communicate with those people because they've got Starlink. It'll unleash tremendous investment opportunity, but government, not interested.
And Dawie Rood says he's optimistic now. A lot of people are dejected, like Frans Cronje, but Dawie Rood, I think the principle is a crisis might be the very thing South Africa needs to just jolt it wakker skrik. Oomblik. Are you optimistic?
I'm always optimistic. I wake up every morning optimistic. I always look for opportunities for me and for my clients. What makes me pessimistic is the government when I see the stupid things that they do. And like Dawie, mine is a tempered optimism. I would like to be optimistic, and which I am, and there still are some opportunities in the South African investment community, but you must not be blind to the opportunities that lie elsewhere. We are all global citizens. We all, believe it or not, we purchase and spend more in dollars than we care to think. Your petrol price, your car price, your cell phone, your computer, your overseas trips, your Netflix, your Facebook, they're all priced in dollars. And you need to invest in dollars to protect your purchasing power for those products. That's one of my last thoughts. One of the reasons why motor cars are so expensive for South Africans is the dollar price of a motor car has risen so much higher than the rand earning power of the average South African. That's why people say, my golly, I can't afford a new car. And you can see it in the sales figures. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about on a practical level.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Magnus. Thank you much for your time. This has been awesome.
Donald, thank you so much. Hey, cheerio. We'll chat again.